Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. This is Ben Kinney. Today, Chad dives into a conversation with Dr. Tracey Jones. Tracey spent 12 years in the United States Air Force. Since, has authored many books, specifically on leadership. In fact, she's the founder of TremendousLeadership.com. You're going to find that her messages are very congruent with the lessons, models, and systems that we teach here at Win, Make, Give. Do me a favor, enjoy this interview with Chad and Dr. Tracey Jones.
So Chad Hyams here with Dr. Tracey Jones. So excited for this ever since your name came across my desk for this opportunity. So hi, and thanks for taking the time to join me today.
Thank you, Chad. It's tremendous to be here.
Well, there's a lot of people who might not, in our audience, might not know you. So let's just start right at the beginning. Give us a quick bio. Give us a quick, who is Dr. Tracey Jones?
Oh, thank you so much. First of all, I'm Dr. Tremendous Tracey Jones. I run a company called Tremendous Leadership, and that is because my father was Charlie Tremendous Jones, and he was one of the top 25 legends of personal development. And he wrote a book called Life is Tremendous back in '65, very much in the genre of Zig Ziglar, Og Mandino. These are the people that I grew up sitting with and listening to as a little girl, so was heavily influenced by positive people, books. I think I read How to Win Friends and Influence People before the Pokey Little Puppy. Okay. And he took all the TVs out of the house when we were in high school and said, you need to read. So I grew up with a bookaholic. My father loved learning. He was a motivational speaker. So it was kind of like a cross between boot camp and sitcom. So everything was really purposeful, but really a lot of fun. So went into the military. I went to military schools, to the Air Force Academy, did 12 years in the military, first Gulf War, Bosnian War, lived all over the world. Unbelievable experiences. Got out, moved to Austin, Texas, keep Austin weird. It was so cool. Went into the high tech, high volume manufacturing. Then I moved to St. Louis and worked for Northrop Grumman, the National Security Agency. And my father passed in 2008. And then it was time for me to come back and discover my entrepreneurial creative side after all these decades. So that's where I've been the last 12 years and just completed my PhD last year in crisis leadership,
Yes.
Which is really coming in handy right now.
I would imagine so. And congratulations on becoming Dr. Tremendous Tracey by that. And, you just threw a lot at us. You finished right there, though. So I've got to ask you, crisis management. That, I think if that was something when I went to school, I might have actually finished college myself or something, because that sounds cool. And well, it was my life. What the heck is crisis management? Why did you earn your PhD in that? How does that apply? You didn't know the coronavirus was going to hit.
Didn't know.
Tell me more.
Sure. Well, I love leadership, and leadership is really lifelong learning. That's all it is. And even if you're not in a quote technical position of leadership, you lead your life, you lead your health, you lead your money, you lead your spiritual development. So I have always been taught you own yourself, okay, and you have to have this intrinsic locus of control. So here I am. I'm back running the business. Had my undergrad, had an MBA. So understanding the mechanics of a business, and I noticed the more my father was a speaker and a writer. The more speaking and writing I did, the more I realized at least half the people that I was speaking to were PhDs. And I thought, you know what? If I'm going to be, quote, the leadership expert, I need to have the terminal degree in this. Plus, actually, Chad, I went back to start my PhD 5 years ago. To this day, I had started it. And it was really because I was so burnt out on trying to figure out how to run a business and be a good leader. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go back to school. So I kind of pivoted on pain, but it was the best possible thing I could have done. So, you have book smarts and you have street smarts. So I had 30 plus years of street smarts. I mean, I could read people. I could fix anything, but I didn't understand the grounded theory behind leadership. And so I went back to get a PhD in leadership, and PhD stands for piled high and deep. Okay. And that's, they didn't tell me that until I graduated. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. But it was awesome because you get to really drill down. And of course, my dissertation was titled Perceptions of Leader Effectiveness in an Organizational Crisis, a case study in follower self-efficacy. So I saw The Darkest Hour. I don't know if you saw it with Churchill, and it was about when England was being overrun by Hitler, and he was going to have to go and negotiate with Mussolini. And King George came to him, Ben Mendelsohn, who played King George, and came to him and said, "You know what? I'm going to stand behind you." And all of a sudden, Churchill you could see the blood and the light come back into his eyes. And I'm like, that is self-efficacy. And self-efficacy is a really fancy, schoolish word for motivation or confidence.
Okay.
And so I have been to war. I've dealt with death of a founder. I've been sued, slandered, deposed, divorced. I have been through every natural disasters, you name it. I have been through. And so I thought, crisis is a way of life. It's just, and the more resilient you become and the more seasoned you become in just fighting the good fight. I mean, it kicked me pretty hard, but I always got up to fight again. I'm a scrapper. And so looking at all these different organizations I've been through, there is one constant. There's always going to be a crisis. Now, in my study, I studied a merger. You're going to go through something, new people, a change of mission statement, a hostile takeover, espionage, workplace violence, something's going to happen. And the second part that I really wanted to understand, Chad, was after being a leader for 30 years, I got so sick and tired of having people say, a good leader can motivate anybody. And if you can't motivate people, you're just not a good enough leader. And I'm like, that is a lie straight from hell. Come on, people. There are some people that even if I gave them $1 million a day would still bite me hard. Okay. This is human nature. And I'm not going to do it for everybody. And everybody's not going to do it for me. So I really wanted to study a crisis and how followers impacted the leader, because a leader can run the day-to-day operation in peacetime, but a leader cannot get the organizational out of a crisis. Only the followers can do that. So I wanted that sweet spot, the trifecta of the level of personal motivation or self-efficacy of the follower, and what they saw in their leader and how that encouraged the leader to stay the course. Why did certain people run into the burning building while other people ran out? And that was really the focus of my study. If you can figure that out, that's the secret of life. That's who you want in your life, and that's who you want to be.
Wow. There was a whole bunch in there, and I wish I had somebody who was taking fast enough notes for me to go back, because there were like 20 different things in there to just jump on, which were fantastic. I loved everything you said there. I know Ben, our CEO, he's going to love the fact that you mentioned Churchill in there, because that's one of his favorite people. And we just talked bravery. So there's people who are running in on a recent episode. So you're talking about a lot of the same things. And we talk about health, wealth, leadership, legacy, all those things you were saying, their money, their health, that they're leading themselves, leading all these. Wow. I mean, we've got the right person here talking, and we're going to probably jump back to some of those things that you said there. I loved how you said that life is crisis all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even in peacetime, in quote unquote peacetime, divorce, we're just feeling sick, so we're in crisis, or someone just quit that we were leading. That creates crisis. We're always in crisis mode.
Absolutely. And so, even the best laid plans, my father would always say, plan on everything going wrong. And you're like, well, that's not very motivational. He's like, well, yeah, it is. If it goes right, we'll work it in. Now, 90% of the time, it's not going to go wrong. But from the military, I learned contingency planning. I will trust but verify. I will hope for the best, but I'm always going to plan worst case scenario. And that's your best offense, is this solid defense. So, I interviewed somebody for my doctoral dissertation about being forged in the crucible of leadership, and the person could not do the interview, so they gave me their second in command. And Chad, their second in command, nothing bad had ever happened to them, and it was the most boring interview I've ever been to. I guess nothing bad ever happened, and it's like Seinfeld with Kramer selling his stories to Peterson. I mean, where are your war stories? What do you talk about at the bar if you're not telling about how you came in and made it happen? But it's just you're going to have a crisis, sickness. You look at what's going on with the pandemic right now, and I'm like, my goodness, it's all about mitigating risk. I'm going to control what I can control, but I'm going to lead my life the way I have to, and nobody gets out of here alive. So you just got to kind of manage the risk, and it's everywhere. At a moment's notice, something can change.
Wow. Okay, so You mentioned in there Air Force, you went back to it again. You know, we all have our war stories, whatever they are. So first of all, on behalf of our whole audience, thank you for your service.
It was an honor. Thank you.
We appreciate what you've done. And as a graduate of the Air Force Academy, as a decorated veteran and all that, you've got to have a war story. And not just any really cool war story, but you probably have a war story that has a lesson in it or something that impacted you just forever and how you've looked at things, something in those areas. Tell me a little bit more about what that war story might be, that then the lesson that came from.
Well, there's two that really stick out. And one was when I was a young lieutenant, and it was when the first Gulf War was kicking off. And we got the notice to go. You had your bags because you would be on alert, and you had about 12 hours to just load up, get your orders, and go away. You didn't know, it was base X, you didn't know where, and you didn't know for how long. And something told me that night, you know what, I might want to pack stuff in my bag and not just have puffy stuff looking at, because you do these dress rehearsals. And I remember my colonel called me and said, I was stationed at Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina at the time, and called me and he said, Tracey, we got the call. And we were one of the first wings to go in. And I was an aircraft maintenance officer on fighter jets. So I was working on F-16s at the time. And he said, hey, we got the call, we're going to go. And he was kind of asking me, are you in? And I was like, I didn't go through 5 years of military school not to be in. And so and I told my parents that, and they're like, okay, you want to go? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, okay, go. I mean, you know, they weren't going to, every parent is concerned, but they were like, you're doing what you want to do. And I didn't take an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, just to sit at home when the bullets started flying. So part of that was, you know, going over there, we didn't know. We heard all this nasty stuff about chemical warfare. We didn't know what was going on. We got dumped off in the desert. But it's what I wanted to do, and it's what I had signed up to do. And so that's what I want to share with people is, when you're all in, you're all in. And what good is joining the military unless you really want to go? Now, I'm not a warmonger by any means. I'm a lover, not a fighter. Okay. But if you threaten what I love and encroach on my values, I'm coming at you. And so that was the first thing, really. I love that he asked me. And then he kind of laughed when I gave him my response. And I was like, I'm not sitting home for this. And so that really showed me that I was doing what I was supposed to do. The second one, Chad, was many years later, deployed to Turkey, and was out there running on the F-15s at the time, and in the big hardened aircraft shelters, walking around doing pre-flights. And one of my sergeants came up to me, and he's like, hey, he goes, Captain, there's no doubt what you know about how to run a safe, effective flight line. He goes, but sometimes it's how you come across saying it. And, you know, I remember thinking, wow, if the enemy shot me through the heart, that would have hurt less than this. But it really was a good lesson for me to learn, because I grew up with hearing this, it ain't what you say, it's the way that you say it. And I'm like, whatever, that's weak. You know what I'm saying? And my dad was in sales, all these motivators, and I'm an engineer. I'm very cut and dried and very high D. And I'm just like, why are you looking at me weird? Just do what I said, kind of thing. And that's really when I learned, even in a male-dominated environment where we're at war, you still have to, as a leader, relate to people with that sense of compassion and empathy and humanness. And so I was so thankful that this individual said this to me, and didn't run to my commander and say, you know what, she's a crappy out. You know how people jump the chain and they don't give the person the opportunity to work on their weaknesses. And he took a risk by saying that to me, but I'll never forget it. And so that was kind of so it wasn't so much what was going on around, but it was that leaders need good followers that will really be honest with them and come alongside them and not tear them down behind their back, which he really could have done, which I've had a lot of other people do. So those are just a couple things that really stuck out in my mind of many, many years of wonderful things that I saw and confronting mistakes that I made, which is really all part of leadership.
Wow. Okay. Some great lessons, and love hearing them again, and love hearing the messages that you're sharing with our audience. Empathy, all of those things in there, and having the right followers makes a leader. I keep hearing you say that one, and I know we're going to come back to it. I've got that on my list of questions to go over here with you a little bit more about our tribe. Yet you said something right at the beginning of this that I loved, and you talked about the fact that Dad put book in your hands at young age. And I love my dad, My dad has passed also, yet love my dad and wished he had put the right books in my hand. He gave me the Robert Ludlum exciting spy novels and all that stuff to allow my imagination to go. Yet, boy, had he put, Zig Ziglar and stuff in my hands at that age, what it would be. Some of our audience have kids. What are the 2 or 3 books right now, if you were buying books for that young teen, maybe at that age where they're starting to read it enough and understand, and they're trapped at home right now, maybe. What are the books you're ordering on Amazon today to put in those kids' hands and say, read this?
Well, when I was that age, I remember reading How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I'm not kidding. That is so simple. Because if you are not taught the basic skills and everybody's like, everybody's so mean to me. And I'm like, well, maybe you're rude to them. We're not teaching kids to understand that their personality is very rough right now and it needs to be developed and it needs to be honed. Okay. So I would say that. And then of course, the power of positive thinking. I mean, that is the core. And I remember reading that probably when I was 10, that basically says, you get to decide what you want to do with life. And if you are intrinsically made in the image of God, shouldn't you be doing godlike things? You know what I'm saying? That you have this greatness within you. And you look at some of these young people or young adults that think they're never going to be destined for greatness. And it's like, oh yeah, man, it's in you. It's in you. And then I want to show you one other one. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Here's something I just wrote, and I talk about this in my research. There's a personality profile called the Big Five, and it's one of my very favorite constructs. And it's online. You can take it for free, and I like it. We've all done Myers-Briggs, DISC, Strengthsfinder, Standout, yeah. This is a continuum about how you score in 5 different traits. OCEAN, OCEAN, openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And I love it so much that I even wrote a kids book for teens about developing a positive personality. Because Chad, you know as well I do. I mean, I went to school. I just got my PhD. I love brain power. But if people don't like you and you aren't aware of how you come off as a person, nobody's going to want to work with you. Nobody's going to pay you to come speak. Nobody's going to read your research because you're going to be all boneheaded and biased. And, I think the earlier you realize you're just a work in progress and you control what you want to do by reading great books and hanging around great people. And my father's mantra was, you will be the same person 5 years from now, except for 2 things: the people you meet and the books you read. So Chad, when I hear people come to me or kids that are sad or depressed, I'm like, who you hanging out with? Oh, yucky people that talk trash on Facebook. I'm like, What are you watching? What are you reading? And I'm like, our minds are a vacuum. Trash in, trash out. Control what goes into this fabulous thing that we call our bodies, minds, hearts, and soul. And the more you do that, the more tremendous your life becomes.
Wow. Yeah. I've heard that as well, that the 5 years will be the exact same people, except the people in the books. So we're always really strong on it. I have the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens was one of the
awesome
gifts I gave my daughter when she was young enough to start reading. I know it's made a difference to add to that book list for people. Now, you mentioned OCEAN again, and I know most of us heard neurotic at the end. That's what we all heard. Yet, break that one down for me again.
Oh my gosh. It's O is openness to new experience. So are you, and again, some people are more open. Some people like routine. Me, if I'm in a routine job, if you ask me to do the same thing every day, I'll be out in about 2 weeks because I have a high scale of openness. I like new things. Chad, they call that intellectual efficacy. In other words, my brain needs stimulated, otherwise I check out. Okay. C is conscientiousness. This is your habits. Show me your habits and I'll show you how successful you're going to be. It's not luck. It's not anything other than, and we have a little book called The New Common Denominator of Success. And it says the only difference between a failure and a success is that a success has made a habit out of doing the things a failure doesn't want to do. So success is in the habits. Extroversion is that charisma, that energy, that atmosphere. You know what's more contagious than the coronavirus? Emotions, okay? It's called emotional contagion. Bad attitudes will kill an organization faster than the virus. And that's why I tell people as crisis leaders, if you got people that are already grousing about coming back, they were probably grousing before the virus. You need to watch out, okay? You need to fumigate and make sure that only healthy minds come back into the entity. Agreeableness, we talked about that with that story about that gentleman. Your EQ, your compassion, your empathy, your consideration. And neuroticism is stinking thinking. Okay, thumb sucking, complaining, griping boneheads that are angry, hostile, pick fights, woe is me, and are very self-oriented. And that will tube an organization too.
Okay, so a lot of our listeners are people who like to know ourselves, because the only way you're going to get anywhere in life is you've got to know you, so you understand your strengths, your challenges, your places to lean in. I heard you mention the DISC before. You mentioned Myers-Briggs. Strength Finders. I got a book just out of reach of all of my assessments that I keep. Where do I go how do I take this ocean one? Where do our listeners
just Google it online? And it's awesome. Google it online. I got another one to tell you too. I got so many free online tests. Just go online and just type Big Five Personality free PDF or test. And in this book for kids, I even have a little Likert scale where kids can take a test online. Okay. Like for instance, this is extroversion. I make friends easily. You score yourself to strongly agree to strongly, and then they get a score, and then they can find out where they land, and then we have tips about how to help them. By the way, all the animals in here are all my rescue animals. So they were all really broken when they came to me, but guess what? They changed. And so it's about becoming the cat's meow. Right? Because that's what we want to be. So they just get online and type in Big Five Personality. They can find a free online test there.
Perfect. Okay. So you mentioned that book. We saw that book there, yet you've got a new one coming out, Spark, right? And it's your fifth. Is that,
Yeah, I have five kids books, but this is my fifth adult book. And I have to be careful when I say adult book because people think one of those kind of books.
Oh, got it. Okay. So we got our 5 kid books, and then we got our 5 not kid reading books. People who think for a living in that regard. Okay. So in Spark, you asked the question, what is hindering you from becoming what you can and need to be? You have how you can take the obstacles in your life and turn them into opportunities, which we're all going to have obstacles. So this is powerful. In the book, you also share 5 essentials that every successful and resilient person on the planet uses to unlock their inner greatness. So we just talked about the 5 in Ocean, yet you've got your 5. Tell me about the 5. Let's talk about them. Let's give everybody a little bit of information about it so that they then say, I need more, and they'll run out and grab their copy of Spark. What's the first one of your 5 areas here?
Sure, Chad. And being in the military, I love acronyms. Okay. So Spark is an acronym. Okay. And S is for singularity. So that is the first one. Okay. And singularity, the thing about this is just like I do leaders and followers, and just like what's going on with the pandemic, there's always a flip side to everything. There's always unintended consequences. Everything's always threaded and integrated. So Spark, really the first 2 letters, S and P, are the things that we control intrinsically. So we have to get square on S for singularity and P, persistence. That's what I bring to the table. If I'm not willing to do them, I cannot ignite my greatness within. But we can't do it on our own. We are not coded theologically or from an evolutionary standpoint to do life on our own. Okay. So A-R-K, A is advocates, R is resources, and K is knowledge. These are the external or the extrinsic things that we need to come to us to help us keep this wheel of motivation going and sparking throughout our lives.
Okay. So I hear the first 2 are us.
Yes.
Right. That's the singularity and persistence.
Correct.
And then the last 3, that's the outside influences that we're allowing into our world, our advocates, our resources, and our knowledge.
Exactly. And so it's this wheel. So they call it metacognition. So we're constantly every day reevaluating this and looking at, okay, has my purpose changed? And your purpose may change. I mean, I think a lot of businesses right now, why I love what's going on right now, this has given me time to really look at and get clarity on what is essential to my core business and what do I need to do as a result of this? How can I reinvent myself? Okay. And then persistent. If you're not willing to put in the grit, it's not going to happen. I don't care how great your vision is. If you don't put your work boots on and make it happen, it's just a Post-it note or a vision board. Okay. So, but after you get this, even though, and Chad, I tried for many, many decades because I am pretty strong and tenacious and hard-headed. I pretty much really tried to go up my own as long as I could. And after on year like 35, I'm like, I'm done. I'm so over this. And, it's that old Barbra Streisand song, people who need people are the luckiest people in the world. And I'm like, who is she talking about? Okay. And then I read a book. Imagine that. I read Dr. Henry Cloud, one of my favorite authors. I read a book called The Power of the Other. And I realized the people that I had in my life were not true advocates. And I got real in who I needed in my life that wanted my success more than me, who I needed in my board of directors for my personal life. Okay. And so I really focused and that helped me flesh out the advocate section. And we think because we just have people in our life that they're the right people to have in our lives. They may not be. And you can't get it right without the right people. And you want to have great people in your life, but you've got to have that core inner sanctum. Jesus had his 12 disciples, but he had his core 3 that knew him like nobody else. That's what I'm talking about, that are going to rebuke you, that are going to exhort you, that are going to give you the connectivity, that are just going to inspire you, that believe in you. Because no matter how healthy my self-esteem and my self-efficacy is, there are going to be days where I feel completely and utterly like a failure. And that's life. I mean, it happens to all of us. So those advocates and then resources, Chad, are we think money. Yeah. The love of money is evil, but money makes the world go round. I mean, you and I love helping people, but if I am not earning a revenue, I don't get to podcast. I don't get to turn the lights on. I don't get to pay employees. I don't get to give to the charitable organizations that I love. So money, a website, connections, the opportunity for you to have me on your show, that's a tremendous resource. And then knowledge. You have to be so hungry to constantly be learning, because when you grow as a leader, you develop that sense of humility. And only when you're humble do you realize how little you know. And then you really fall in love with learning. And then you just keep this cycle going on, and you can just continue sparking the next best version of yourself every day.
Wow. And I'm just going to take that part. And I think I'm going to just keep listening to that part again and again and again every morning, just to make sure that I keep myself keeping that wheel going and all of that. Thank you for sharing it, Doc, as right. We get the right to call you now. A lot of our people, we talk, as I said, health, wealth, leadership, and legacy. And that's something that we talk a lot on our podcast and in our interviews, or anybody that we're talking to, because it's what we're leaving behind. And our leadership usually creates a lot of that legacy in certain areas of it. The third one you said in there, and you focused on it a little bit, yet the third one you said in there was our advocates, right? That's our tribe. People might have heard that term. And by having so many people who are leaders, we're also followers.
Oh, gosh, yes.
We're always in someone else's tribe, even though we might be a leader of our own tribe or our own family or ourself, whatever that might be. You talk about that followership, that tribe concept in there. How has this theory changed your perspective on leadership with such a strong focus on followership?
Oh my God, it changed everything. It really made me look at, you talk about knowing yourself, but I had to understand what people brought out the best in me, and what followers brought out the best in my organization. I also had to find out what followers I resonated with as a leader. Okay. So there's tests online too called implicit followership theory, which is a leader's ideal follower. Okay. And implicit leadership theory, which is a follower's ideal leader. And it's like work is a professional marriage, and you can be unequally yoked at work, just like in a marriage. The Bible talks about being unequally yoked, and you're both in a thing trying to pull together. And if you're not going in the same direction, you're going to kill each other. Okay. Work is no different than that. And so this understanding followership helped me realize, Tracey, you have some strange foibles and idiosyncrasies. You also have some wild strengths. You need to find somebody that has the intentionality that really vibes with you. And you need to take the time. And Chad, I know this sounds weird, but when I really stopped looking, because I hired so many people and I tried so hard. And within 60 minutes of hiring them, I'd think, dear God, why? And it wasn't on them, it was on me. I mean, I accepted it as a leader. But the hardest thing in the world, vision is easy. Work is easy. We like work. We're Americans. We love working, okay? And even finding people to come alongside me, but finding those right people, those right executors to help you live your dream. Man, but they're out there. And I think they appear to you when you get clear on your vision and you get the right advocates in your life. And so understanding the followers that I need to bring out the best in me, that love my business as much as I do and wanted to be successful as much as I do, that really changed my whole theory of leadership. And I look more at leadership as it's not really leadership, it's co-leaders. I call my team members, they're co-leaders because we're all in this together.
Like that. See, and it's the words you're using and the people that you're choosing to have there, and then you're giving them that to lift them up so they know that they're part of that team with you.
Right. And, it's trust is huge. Without trust, George MacDonald has one of my favorite quotes, and he says, to be trusted is a higher compliment than being loved. I get that. I may like you, but if I don't trust you, it's like Michael Scott in The Office. We've all been like totally binging on The Office. Love him, trust him. I don't know. I still love him. But I want to trust you, but I would go further than trust and say that I could entrust you. I want to hand you over the keys to the kingdom. And to do that, I got to know that in my absence, if I depart the earth tomorrow, it's all yours. And I think when you find people like that, it goes far beyond just exchanging time for money and punching a clock, and to you're together and they have joined into that singular vision and purpose. And it can be done. And for those of you out there thinking, oh, dear God, there's nobody more pragmatic and more rough and tumble than me. And I used to hear people say this before it happened to me and be like, whatever, it's just not going to be in the cards for me. And it finally happened. And I look now and can see where it couldn't have happened before because I wasn't ready for it to happen. The timing wasn't right. And so I would just encourage your listeners, keep the faith, stay on. You've come too far. You're 39 out of year 40 in the wilderness. Don't you stop now, and just keep going.
Okay, you got two things in there I want to touch on. First one was trust. You mentioned trust. I think we all have a general idea what trust means. How do you build trust in your followers? Is it just you find people that are trustworthy, or are you building trust over time?
Well, there's that social bank or that social capital. But here's the thing. Even when I have had bosses who were unethical and I did not trust, I still was I'm coded as an ethic. I still really did everything that I could. Trust is a character thing. I can't put character into you. And that's why when people get squeezed, what's inside comes out. And that's when you see these character malformations that people are like, whoa, what happened? I'm like, oh, it was already there. You just didn't see it. Trust is something like character that is there. A lot of people will say, history doesn't make leaders. We build men and women of character, and then history just raises them to the forefront. So I would say trust is a moral coding. Trust is a character issue, and I think a conscience issue. And I think that is something very intrinsic, your faith perspective, whether you're self-oriented or you're more service-oriented, all those things go into that. And all I can do is look for that, and then I'll be able to tell it pretty quickly once you come into the organization. So trust is something your exemplary followers should bring to you, and you cultivate that. Because if you don't, Chad, that they'll go someplace else because they're going to want somebody they can trust.
Is it a one chance thing? Is it you give somebody one shot? I mean, once they break your trust, can trust be rebuilt?
Yeah. It can, and that's when you go back into, there's two different things. There's peacemaking and there's peacekeeping. Why the UN fails at peacekeeping is because there's an issue, but you never really go in and unpack it and restore it, okay? Peacemaking, the Bible said, blessed are the peacemakers. If there's a breach in trust, You go back and you unpack it, you address it. Both sides come willingly. They accept what happened. They accept their ownership of it. They express their apologies, their sorrow, and then a behavior is changed. Oh my gosh, I think of all the times, Chad, somebody gave me a second chance, and where I was just either immature or too stupid or unevolved to get it. But watch, because the Army After Actions report says no lesson is learned until a behavior is changed. And I have made a lot of mistakes in my life. I tend to make them just once. So give people the grace to fail and give them the grace to accept them back. Show them mercy, which is undeserved favor, but watch, because you'll know soon enough if you made the right decision or not.
Awesome. Okay, the other thing you talked about in there was vision.
Mm-hmm.
So help our audience. How do they cast a vision? How do they create that vision? And then how do they share that vision with others to make sure that the followers know the vision and want to be a part of it, or don't?
Yeah, and that's true. And you know what? It's the follower's choice. I have left jobs. I never left a bad job. I loved everything I did. But when the vision or the leadership would change, where I felt like we didn't have a congruence anymore, I would leave. There's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong is if you stay in an organization and you try and tear it down from within. Vision is tricky. We think, well, we got to be like a Bill Gates or an Oprah or somebody. Vision is really just seeing what needs to be done and doing it. Now, the hardest thing where I struggled, and I think our listeners can identify with this. There are two kinds of thinkers in the world. There are linear thinkers and there are radial thinkers. Linear thinkers, which are a lot of great men and military thinkers, point A, point B, point C, point D. Okay, so they kind of march along and build on each other. Radial thinkers tend to pull more spokes and wheels. If you're a multitasker, you do it. So for me, the struggle with finding my singularity was I inherited a legacy-based business. Oh my gosh, so I'm trying to figure out what would my dad do? This is not my dad anymore. He's in heaven. I have to put my branding and my DNA on it. I'm thinking back because I bring my own bucket, my biases, my assumptions, my blind spots. What worked in the military may not work in this small niche business. So it's really, vision is seeing what needs to be done and just keep drilling down until you get to the issue behind the issue where you understand exactly. And you will know it because when you dial in your singularity, you know what to focus on and you get this fire in your belly and you know what questions to ask and you know what people to stop hanging out with. You just get the scales come off your eyes and you get intense clarity. So that took me about 30 years to get. So it doesn't have to take you that long, but if it does, don't worry about it because there's something about the process of getting to your individual singularity, which is going to be really uniquely you. But why I like growing older, I care less and less what people think. And I'm more and more dialed into this is what I was put on this earth to do. So I love it. I love it.
And for those
I might get it right one of these years.
There you go. And for those of us who worry about getting older, don't. It gets you closer to that point of not caring. And then again, there's some of us who just didn't care at all. So we had that one early in our life. Okay, you mentioned trust. We talked about trust and we talked about people when we talked about trust. Yet let's not limit it to people because as a leader, there are truths that you used to believe. And now you can no longer trust those exact same truths. Let's talk about that. What are some of those truths that no longer hold up and you can't trust anymore?
Ooh, well, a lot of different things. Now, one of the things is truth, universal truth is immutable, but what's changing is us. So that's why we go back and we read some of these books that we read 10 or 20 years ago and we're like, como say what? You know, we change. Truth doesn't change. True truth is universal. Laws of the universe, physics, relativity, that stuff doesn't change, okay?
So gravity is always going to be there.
Right. We change and we discover stuff. And so one of the things that I've really realized is that there are different things now. The things that have changed are the changes in globalization, complexity, and the speed of change. Okay. So that means that you just have to, we often think that, you know, the truth is going to rule out in the end. Well, you just have to be a lot more shrewd about how you view what is going on in the world, because in the olden days, we used to think that everybody would do the right thing and everything would work out and the truth would prevail. There is really an assault on truth and critical thinking and individual greatness going on right now. So you really have to watch out and just be aware of that and understand. One of the greatest things that I learned from my PhD is if I can't find it in a peer-reviewed journal, I don't want to hear you say it. And I tell people, cite me or bite me, okay? Because otherwise it's pure supposition and it's emotion, it's edit. I don't have time for that. Give me the facts, okay? And so that has really given me clarity on it. So I think for leadership, leaders, there's a new school of thought called sense-making strategies. And it's really the core of ethical decision-making. You just got to really be sure. You think you know who you can trust, but you better cross-check and check and check and check again. And I think that's one of the things for leaders. Truth doesn't change, but getting to the truth there's a lot more fog and friction in the world going on now than there was before. So I would really say that's just one thing as leaders to be aware. The other thing is there's so many more because we are all globally linked. It's no more just what happens to your business. Every thread that gets pulled across the world has repercussions throughout all of us, as we're seeing right now. Okay. So understand too, you work in this global thing where you have to look not just at your entity, your industry, or even your country, but how does this impact the bigger global picture and the big human race? So those are the two things, which is not a bad thing. It's just a thing you need to be aware of.
Okay. So you talk about change in there again and what changes and what's not changing. Leadership has changed. I mean, if we go back to my dad, your dad, leadership back then was the boss just yelled at you and that was leadership. You did your job, you earned your watch, you went home, right? That's not true though nowadays. And as we move and the millennials start to become more of the workforce, leadership concepts have to change. Some are constant and some are going to be different than they ever used to be. Talk about some of that leadership for our people here that are leaders, and we all are in one way or another. Talk about what still works and maybe what they should be thinking about that's kind of changing and different from how we used to lead.
Absolutely. Well, my father always said, if you want a better leader, be a better follower and you'll have a better leader. Okay. So I still go back, Chad. There is no followership without leaders and there is no leadership without followership. So I don't think you can separate the two. Leaders and followers are the flip side of the same coin. You cannot have one without the other. So I would see the constants are understanding when you're building an organization, understand that you're going to have people that fall into one of two camps. Yeah, they're going to be in the middle. The ones in the middle you can push to the side you want to go to. But people are either SOBs or OCBs. And SOB in my book stands for self-oriented behaviors. Okay?
Oh, wait, you just made SOB nice. Hold on a second.
I know. Well, it's selfish. Yeah, it's kind of SOB,
Okay.
It's just not cursy. You can say in church, okay?
Sure.
So when you get people in an organization that are signed on to be with, it's like the military. If I would have said, no, I don't want to go to war, that's very self-serving, okay? Why did I use taxpayers' dollars to go to a military academy? But you know what I'm saying? So you still are going to have people that are just there for what they can get out of it. You know that. You have people in your organization. I've had it. They just want a paycheck. That's it. Don't make them change. Don't do anything else. Okay. This is a fact. This is life. And they're entitled to that. But you as a leader need to understand you can only do so much coaxing, cajoling, coaching, coddling before somebody has to step up and accept ownership. OCBs are called organizational citizenship behaviors. You need to find followers that have the conscientiousness, the loyalty, the self-awareness, the self-sufficiency to be able to do the right thing when you're not looking over them. Oh my gosh, if we had really engaged followers, we wouldn't need leadership. But that's Jesus would have been a socialist too. But if we were all completely selfless, then we could all be socialists, but we're not selfless. We're all self-serving. That's at the core of what's going on. So I think for leaders to realize, make sure you get people that own what they bring in and have a high desire to be developed, okay? Because they're going to be open to when the crisis happens. They're going to be open to learning new things. Because, Chad, no matter what a leader does, if the follower will refuse to be led, there's nothing they can do. Case in point, I just saw an article come across one of the blog feeds. You've heard about the PPP, the Payment Protection Loan.
Sure. Yep.
This lady has 2 day spas in Washington. She got the PPP. God bless her. She can keep paying people for 2.5 months. Guess what? Her employees were furious. Why? because now they couldn't draw more money on unemployment benefits, and they felt mad at her because she took something they thought they deserved. So what do we have here? We have some employees that are interested more in banking as much money as possible and not the needs of the organization. That is incredibly short-sighted, because in 2.5 months, those robusted benefits are not going to go on forever. That's to get us through this blip. But when you get followers that all they're looking at is right now and me, you need to watch out, because they're not going to be with you in the long term, and they're going to cause you more problems than they're going to deliver on results. So,
okay, so we've got the two sides of the coin there. Again, we got leaders and followers. You're saying two sides. You can't have one side without the other. Right. And you're saying that in your organization, you're going to have those OCBs, but you're probably going to have some of those SOBs.
Right.
You just have to get to acknowledge who they are, because we need them.
We need them. Well, here's another free test. Okay, so Robert Kelly, this book changed my life. Okay, leader. I can't be a leader without great followers. Now, I can work on myself, but I got to have good followers. Okay. There is a free online test about the 5 types of followers, okay? And he talks about your level of critical thinking and your level of all-in engagement. And you can actually score and put a little dot on an XY axis, science nerds, okay, and see what's going on. And I tell every organization do this. So there's 5 different types of followers. One is passive, low thinking, low engagement. These are your sheeple, your lemmings. They just, if you light a fire under them, maybe they'll get something done. We know people like this. Okay. Then there are people that are really low critical thinkers, but they're all in engagement. This is your conformists, your yes people, your people pleasers. Chad, you could be about to make the worst decision, but I'm going to go, yay, Chad, let's do this. Okay. Think, people. You see stuff at your level. I made a decision 5 years ago that cost me 90% of my revenue. 90, not 90. And at the end, when I looked at my team and I said, hey, this is what happened, somebody finally said, yeah, we knew that was going to happen. And I'm like, oh, why didn't you tell me? Okay. And then the next one is you're middle of the road. You're a politician. You're a fence straddler. Okay. It's called, and did you know the word politics is actually Greek? Poly means many and ticks means bloodsuckers. Did you like that? Okay, that's my dad's favorite. But God bless anybody in politics. You're doing something that I could never do. So these are the people that are kind of the fence straddlers. They'll play games if they think the boss wants to do it. Okay. Then you have the people that are very critical thinkers but low on engagement. These are your alienated followers. Find out where these guys fell out of love with you. Typically, they got thrown under the bus somewhere. Bring them back on board. Who you really need in your organization is high critical thinking, all in engagement. And they're what Robert Kelly calls exemplary followers. So the more exemplary followers you gather, the better leader you're going to be. You cannot be a good leader with crappy followers. You can have great followers and a crappy leader, okay? You can, because they'll just do what needs to be done. But in a crisis, you need exemplary leadership and you need exemplary followership. And what's going on right now with this virus? The people that hated work before and were negative, guess what? Even after the virus, they're still going to hate work and be negative. And the people that were resilient before are looking at this saying, come on, I want to get back to work. We can figure this out. The crisis didn't change people. It just squeezed them and you saw what was in them. And that's the important part for people. So build that efficacious, resilient team now, because there's going to be something else right around the corner, and use this as a learning opportunity.
Wow. Okay. Wow. And normally I would just say, done, cut, drop the mic, and we all walk off on that. Yet I can't yet, because one, I've got one more question for you that I want to put you on the spot for. Yet before I even get to that question, if people want to know more about you, they want to know more about your company, they want to get your book, they want to order Spark or one of these books for their kids before, where do they go? How do they get their hands on all of this and more, Dr. Tracey Jones?
Thanks, Chad. www.tremendousleadership.com. Get on the website, free webinars, all our books, ebooks, audio, my dad's stuff, my stuff, the kids' stuff. Spark will be out next month. And get on our YouTube channel, Facebook, Instagram. We just started podcasting. So we have our Crisis Leadership Series podcasts that are coming out for the next 2 weeks. We've even been giving free ebooks, all kinds of wonderful things on there. So tremendousleadership.com.
Okay. So we're going to send them to tremendousleadership.com to learn more about Tremendous Tracey and everything that you've got going on there. And we appreciate that. And then we look forward to everybody grabbing something from this. Yet I don't get out of this without putting you on that spot too.
Okay.
Give everybody that one thing, that one little piece of homework they can do. Now, I'm going to take some of the things away from you. Because you gave us a whole bunch of quizzes we could go take online, and a lot of our listeners love doing those things. You can't say, okay, go take an assessment and go do this, right? Yet give them a little piece of homework that they can do that's going to help them move forward as a leader in their lives, in their world, whatever it's going to be from you.
Okay. I would say the biggest piece of homework that they can do right now, and this is probably a rare time when you can do it, you need to take some time and get away. You need to do what I call a reset or Sabbath. Okay. All these wonderful things are going to be going on in your head, and I love providing content, but go away now. Go away, get quiet, try to purge out everything, and try to focus on what it is that you want most to do, because we've got so much, all this stuff going on around us. And then when you get in that really, really quiet place, I want you to commit to opening a book for at least 15 minutes a day. I mean, a good book that really gets into what is going on inside you. Not fiction. That's like eating candy. Okay. That's saccharine for your head. Nothing against fiction, but I mean, be quiet. Get alone for 15 minutes in the morning, just get centered, okay, and then grab a great book, and this is going to be the start of your day, and that's going to orient you towards everything, because if we just bump up and start running out, boy, it's really tough. And every day I start the morning and I sit there and I get time where I'm alone, I'm prayerful, I do my own individual reading, my own devotional, and just try and get centered on where am I at and what do I need to do. So I would say that's really important.
Okay, so I heard two pieces of homework in there. I heard one, get away, right? Go process all of this stuff that they're hearing from you, that they're hearing from all of our episodes, whatever it's going to be. Take some time and process, and then build a routine, build that habit of starting their day with 15 minutes of purposeful, healthy reading, not the candy fiction reading.
Right. And Chad, I'm so glad you said that. You got to digest it. I mean, even with my PhD and dissertation, you got to take time. Books are wonderful meals. And if you just keep shoving them down there, you're going to be like, you have to allow them time to digest and start transforming you. And, my dad would say he had about 30 books that he read his entire life cover to cover. And then he had a couple 100,000 that he would just skim. So just watch it. Don't overload yourself, but take time and then reflect and digest, and take notes. When you write down stuff, you're twice as likely to remember and internalize something. So make sure you do this, and then you'll see it, because people are like, I read, but I didn't get anything. Well, reading is just like everything else. You have to be very purposeful and active about it. And the more you do it, the better you're going to get. So thanks for bringing that up, Chad.
You're the one who brought it up. I just got to reword it and make it sound really good. There's nothing else. I mean, I think it's been obvious since we opened this interview, and just finishing it by saying, Dr. Tracey, that was tremendous.
Thank you, Chad. Thanks for bringing that out.
Thanks for taking the time with us today.
A huge thank you to Dr. Tracey Jones for taking her time and sharing with us today her thoughts on leadership and all that entails. Now, you can learn more about Dr. Tremendous Tracey by visiting tremendousleadership.com, where you can get your hands on her books that we were talking about and more information as needed. We're also going to tell you, come join us at facebook.com/groups/win-make-give, where we will be posting links to many of those personality assessment profiles you can be taking that we talked about during this interview. Until the next time, please make sure that you have subscribed. Check out some of our past episodes. Don't forget to give us a rating and a review while you're there. And until our next conversation, remember, wash your hands, and as always, do good.